Yes.
Yeah, apparently.
It's me, John, and Ken are the power team for finance and communications. Mhm.
Yeah, we're gonna do a,
Makes sense.
22.
All right,
Hi, John.
I think we're
Hi.
one.
All right, are we ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay, today is Monday, April 4th. This is the Communications Committee. I'm going to call this meeting to order. First up is roll call. Tracy, do you mind calling roll?
Council Siler,
Here.
Council Johnson,
Here,
Council Anderson,
Here. Next up is approval of the March 14th, 2022 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Tracy, do you mind calling, or any discussion?
I was not here, but I did review the meeting and the minutes.
Great. Tracy,
Council
do you mind
Siler,
calling the roll?
Yes.
Council Johnson,
Yes,
Council Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. All right, the next item, and we have some special guests in the room, which I can't see fully, so maybe we could do a quick go around the room. But the next item is really going to be a joint discussion with the school board on budget roundtables. So just to set the stage for this, at one of our past communication meetings, Councillor Seither had proposed we go back to reconsidering doing these roundtables that we've done in the past. I think it's been a few years. We haven't done them since COVID happened. And so we figured before we commit to anything in specifics, let's pull the school board together, have a conversation, figure out how we would want to scope these, how many meetings, do we want to do this, et cetera, to really get aligned on format and function so that we can make sure we have a plan that we can all do. I would think based on the conversation today, we both can go back to our bodies and just align that that's an approach that everybody is comfortable or agreeing to take as it relates to doing a roundtable this year. So really, this is just going to be open conversation. But before we go into conversation, can I just get a sense of who's in the room since I'm the only person who's physically not there?
everybody but you.
I'm Kristen. Hi, John.
Hi,
Jenna. Hello. Jillian.
and that's Tracy next to Jillian, I think.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, just kind of kick things off. So in the past, and Councillor Seither, correct me if I say anything wrong, because I know you were involved in these, but in the past, when we did these roundtables, we deliberately went out to the public in different locations. We tried to have both a counselor and a school board member there, really with the intent of capturing questions, trying to answer what we could at the time. But really, I think that culminated into some sort of FAQ document that was shared with the public that included a lot of the questions that we got through these roundtables. Again, I think when we kind of pulsed the council, I think there was a little bit of mixed reviews in terms of the effectiveness of these, where I think it really depended on the session people were in. Like some sessions were very engaging and dynamic, and some didn't get much of a turnout. And so I think the question is really like, what's the right format and function for these to make sure that we're all spending the appropriate amount of time, but also just giving the public another opportunity outside of our finance committee meetings to ask questions, because everybody is invited to participate in our finance committee meetings when we review the budget with town staff. But again, I think, what we learned last week in the counselor corner, I think, which we're going to have a later conversation on, I think people feel like those formats or those meetings aren't always conducive for a back and forth conversation. And so something like a roundtable might actually be a different format, more similar to what we did last week for Counselor Corner Live, where it was really just ask questions and have dialogue to give people the opportunity. But the question is what makes sense? What do we want to do? And how much time do we want to commit to it? I don't know, Counselor Seither, if there's anything you want to add.
No, I think you hit all the high points. I did go back into the budget docs that I had. And so in 2019, we did 4 sessions, one at the library, one at Dunstan Fire Station, one at Blue Point School, and one at Town Hall. And they were kind of scattered. Some of them were at 6:30 at night. And then 2 of them were, the one at the library and the one at Town Hall was at, 11 o'clock in the morning or something on a Saturday.
At what point in the budget process were those?
It was, so they were scheduled for the last week of April that year. So department reviews for the town council had been, had been conducted for the most part, but it was before, council consideration of second reading.
Is that before finance had identified any recommendations to the council?
I have to have my school board hat on because that was my take at the time. And so I don't actually know whether recommendations have been made at that point.
Or the reason why I'm asking is, first read is this week.
Yes,
And first read is never what the ending state of the budget is. So I would imagine if there's questions are going to be around general numbers, maybe by category, by bucket. And I would think it would be efficient to have at least somewhat of a final version of that budget for those sessions go. That's just my initial thought.
I think there's value to both. I think sometimes the public craves participation in shaping those discussions. And so if the public has a real interest in the public safety budget, if members of the public want to come and discuss the public safety budget, yes, they're going to have questions that maybe they wouldn't have if we had already done the department review. But they also, I think, in some cases, find that conversation with counselors more fulfilling to be like, these are my priorities for when you meet with the public safety department or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think it depends on who's engaging, but I think sometimes people value that pre-engagement.
Mhm.
That's all I've got right now. I want to hear others.
So Ken, just curious, so are you thinking that if we do something like this, that not only is there something we would want to do pre-second reading, but also think about what would we want to do post-second reading between after we've done second reading and the referendum, or?
Well, that's what I was thinking initially, but after what Councilor Sider just said, that rung true with me.
Mhm.
It probably should be beforehand, before adjustments, getting input, even before we meet with the department heads, which would mean we'd probably have to do it fairly soon. I'm not sure how many would need to be done. But yeah, I would probably go with either one.
Mhm.
It's probably fitting it in the schedule. I'm sure you've got a schedule to share, right, to where we could fit this in.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, it was kind of a week-long blitz. It was like Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay, in one.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it was
Back
just,
to back.
it was just literally like, if you can't make it this one, come Thursday. If you can't come Thursday, come Saturday.
And I would only suggest that, I think when you did, let me just back up. My experience with this has always been a superintendent and town manager. So I'm just not familiar with the council, even though it makes sense to me. I'm not sure who would participate, but I would. The public safety building, I don't know if we can find the schedule, it's definitely conducive to
Yeah, that would be a
Good
great
point,
location.
It's a lot of space, people feel comfortable, everybody knows where it is.
Well, and it's a good opportunity, I think, to get the community in there too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because there's still a lot of folks that
Yeah, who haven't been in, yeah.
I had my annual meetings there with my association, and people love it.
Yeah.
TVs drop out of the ceiling and stuff like that, so
Yeah, maybe we could do one at the
maybe we can
hub.
find out the schedule on that and what week it coincides with it.
Families would feel comfortable there.
Yeah.
So library hub, public safety building.
We haven't broken in Agro Hall, I don't know what kind of condition that's in. Because when the superintendent and the town manager would do it, where would they go when they go that part of town, do you know? You remember?
Dunstan Fire Station.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was weird because we had one at Dunstan Fire Station and then we had one at Blue Point. We did two on that side of town.
Okay.
I don't remember what the circumstances were. I don't think I had anything to do with the scheduling. I just showed up where Larissa told me to be.
So are we saying we still want to try and do the format of us going to different places where we would go to the public safety building, the library, and another location?
What do you
Blue
think?
Point, Are you looking at me virtually?
I am.
Can't tell.
The owl is looking at you.
I think we could go wherever. I think the thing I want to make sure we do is, I think there will be some people who want to participate just virtually. So I'm just wondering, like, do we have just one that's just a virtual meeting that makes it easier from like a logistics perspective, which really could be anywhere in town. So I would think, like, at a minimum, while all these I'm assuming would be hybrid, where we could do some virtual engagement. I think if we're going to go to a place like the fire station, I don't know if that's as conducive to virtual, like having a hybrid type meeting, or if it really has to be like full in person.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost steer away from hybrid and do 3 in-person sessions and 1 completely virtual session. Like, hybrid does get tricky, especially depending on the venue. I don't know how much value it adds.
Yeah, I agree. It changes the energy
Yeah,
sometimes too. Yeah, you can get lost when you're at home, but maybe we would need to do 2 virtual,
yeah.
just to have different times of day.
So I need to ask, because I personally, just my opinion, have never seen the value in moving around town. Everybody comes into town when they do town business. That's why I favor the public safety building. Number one, it's big, it's open. Anybody that has concerns about COVID or anything, that accommodates that. And you know where to go. You
That's
know, if
fine
you're,
with
if
me. I
you're
think
trying
it's
to
easier
line up
to
your
promote.
schedule, go, wait a minute, I can't do Tuesday, but I can do Thursday. And where's Thursday?
Sure.
So if it's all at the public safety building, and I think the turnout will be, well, I mean, first read, all the papers are headed 7.5% in a year that we've got runaway inflation. You're gonna have people want to come talk. That's gonna.
I agree with Ken. I think if we could like have 2 at public safety and 2, I think Kristen, you had said try and do 2 virtual. I feel like having the 4 options and then try and figure out how we time those. Like April, you said one of them is on a weekend, which would be good. Maybe that's one of the in-person ones. And then how do we time these virtual ones so that we can make sure, again, it's not too early for some folks, but not too late for others. So we might be able to, if we could even in theory, do those back to back on the same day, potentially, if we wanted to, where we could try and do one from 5 to 7 and then 7 to 9 or something, just so that it's the same date and let people choose. What about others from the school board? Jillian and Jenna, what do you guys think?
Location wise, I like the idea of having it all done at a public safety board. Uniformity would be easier for everyone to know where it is. Virtually, I think a lot of times we have families who like to sign on because they physically just can't make it here. So ideally, like dinner time rushing, and I think the following day, just to, so there's an alternate day, if you can't make it this day, around the same time. I like the idea of having an alternative location, but also having a virtual time and day, and also not at dinner time or maybe a time during working hours and a time during I don't know, a Sunday I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what everybody's schedules are, but I know that if you want to hit specifically a variety of age groups, then you need to make times available for when those age groups are mostly available.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we do 1 virtual, 2 in person, and 1 hybrid. I don't know if that opens up like a different time for we're doing virtually. I don't love hybrid either, but it might be beneficial. Yeah.
Well, John, I see that we have probably 3 items that need a consensus vote for it to move forward. It's number 1, location. It's a single location or variety of location. And the number of meetings from 4 to, I lean to 2, but that's just me. So that, and what did I say, 3?
You did.
Help me out. Was
I
there
think
a third
times
one?
of day, right?
Times a day?
It sounds like it
Yeah.
should be 2.
No, virtual or versus non-virtual. Well, because they can all be hybrid, correct? They can all, last, your council corner was hybrid,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right? So they could all be hybrid. I don't know if designating one full remote, I don't know who that benefits.
I think it's
One of the
hard.
councils
I
of the
think when
BOE
you're
don't want to be
the,
there.
I think when you're the person who's at home and everyone else is in the room, hybrid is not an ideal situation. But if everybody's on Zoom and we're the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
like people
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's,
You're all on the same.
yeah,
page.
you're all in the
Okay.
same,
Yes. It's its own type of.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's easy to forget about the people
Yeah.
in the room. Online.
Online when
all
you're in the
there,
room,
like
yeah.
John is now.
Yeah. So what I thought
So it's
I,
location, time, and virtual, right?
yeah, weekend. I'm just trying to write down my thoughts to just summarize.
Because it is April. I
Yeah.
think we have to come out of this room with those decisions, right?
Yeah, so maybe how does this sound to folks? And we can like pick which ones, but I feel like what I've heard is trying to get this to some consensus is 1 full virtual, 2 completely in person, even though those could be broadcasted, and 1 hybrid. For anything that has people physically there, the location would be the public safety building. So we would need the public safety place for 3 times. And then in terms of times of day, we would like one of these to be offered as a weekend option, 1 as a morning option during the week, 1 in the evening. And then I think we have 1 more that we could decide like what would be the most convenient for the public? Would it be 2 evenings, 2 on the week? Like I think we can be flexible and say, how do we want to do that other one? It might be evenings because that just might be, and by evenings, I mean after 5, which we could kind of even play with to say we could do 1 evening that's like 5 to 7. And then we could do another one where it's like 7 to 9 or something that just, again, whatever's most convenient for somebody. If it's 1 evening is better earlier or later. So that would be kind of the mix of how we could potentially approach it. That ultimately is trying to like give people options and then they can pick the option that works best for them. I'm looking at you, April Scyther. I can see you.
I'm looking at Liam because he is the cat that has the canary right now. He is,
I think we just need to.
I would like
think we
to
just
hear
need
what Liam has to
I
think.
think we just need to. We need to get a proposal together. I think that again, I like the variety. I like both format and location and time period. I think we just need to. It's not going to be 4 options is great. If you can't attend one of those 4 options, then there are other channels to provide feedback. So I think that we could probably deliberate this for the next hour and a half. Why don't we, I guess in terms of guidance, I think if we're gonna do 2 in person, I would think we do 1 in the evening, 1 in the daytime.
Yep.
Or do we think it's 1 in the evening and 1 on the weekend? We want to do a weekend one. I think the weekend one in person probably makes the most sense.
Yeah,
Because that's when okay, all
I
right.
agree.
All right, so we'll have the weekend
Yeah.
one be in person.
And 1 in the evening be in person,
Okay,
and then the virtuals real flexible, right?
Mhm.
sure. Do you have a preference for the virtual and the completely virtual one? Do you think that should be during the day?
What What do you think the target audience for virtual is?
7 o'clock at night, it's families.
Right.
That would be my thinking. It would be people who have taken care of dinner, but now can't get back out because their kids are all home.
Right.
So what if we do the hybrid one during the day, during the week?
Yeah,
And then
I think that
virtual
sounds
one.
perfect.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
great.
And then we did we say agree on the week we would want to do these? My assumption was we would target it the week of April 25th, which would be before the school second read, because I think the school second read is May 5th. So again, if we had some conversations with the public that week, again, that gives more information to the school board if they wanted to make any suggestions based on that public input. Is that going to be too late in the game, or is that?
I would just say to
I'll
keep in mind that we have our public hearing on April 28th.
So also, like, just to add to everyone's calendar for consideration, the 26th, we have finance committee meeting from 4 to 7. And then, Ken, get ready for it. Get ready for it.
If that's excitement, you know.
Yes.
And you said April 28th is public hearing for the schools?
Yes. I forget that the schools go off our meeting schedule that week because school vacation is the previous week. So for the month of April, town council and school board are not synced.
Yes.
Mhm.
You said that and I was like, do we have a meeting the
No,
27th?
sorry, I should have said that, yes, vacation.
Yeah. So will that make it a challenge if we did it the week before because of school vacation?
Yeah, I
But-
think,
Or what if we tried to do, like, if we tried to split it, like do 2 the week of the 17th through the 23rd, and then 2 the week of the 24th through the 30th?
I think that would work.
So 28th is the second reading for BOE.
It's our public hearing. Is that our second? No, it's not our second meeting. It's just our public hearing. Our second meeting is on the 5th, I believe. I was just trying to pull up the calendar.
yeah, April and May is weird for the school board because they meet the last week of April, but then the first Thursday of May is the following
Yeah,
week.
but we
Yeah.
separate them. I know you guys do your second reading in public hearing. No, yours aren't.
No, ours are separate too, yeah.
So you're, yes, our second meeting is May 5th. Right? Nothing's on that.
Yes.
That's right. Okay.
So I'm hearing we're gonna do a split?
Yeah,
to
let's split it.
accommodate? So
Yeah.
in the split, do you think the 2 in-persons should be in the first half of the split? See if Colette was here, we could get the availability of the public safety building.
I mean, I trust that after this, I mean, honestly, if we've kind of scaffolded this and all 6 of us, BOE and town council
Yeah.
say, yeah, that roughly this is what we're looking for. I think Liam has an idea of what we're looking for. John would be fine if then Liam came back and said, these are the 4 days, these are the 4 times.
Right.
Town council, school board, get your houses in order and make sure you have somebody at each
Yeah.
one of these.
I think that would actually work better, to be honest, because I think with the school, trying to organize the school tour, I think it's just that same concept of we just have to pick a date and just run with it. And I think, Liam, if you're comfortable just kind of taking the guidance from today and just proposing something that we can all just kind of determine what's next or where we can support it, I think that would be good. But in terms of approach, so maybe we can move past kind of logistics and really talk about like the meat of the meeting. Like what do we need to do in terms of preparation? I think in the past, there were a couple of slides that were presented just to kind of kick things off before they were open for discussion. So again, any conversation or thoughts on actual like format of the meeting? What would we need? Who would we want there? Again, I'm assuming we want definitely at least to have 1 town councilor and 1 school board person there. Again, don't have to be experts in the budget at that time, really just to kind of gather public input and feedback. So I think all of us might be at varying stages at that point with understanding of the budget, which I think is okay. But we just want to make sure we have, elected representation in all 4 of those meetings that we have.
Well, you're right, you gotta have some kind of presentation material. I'm sure we all have on the finance committee, are deep in the budget already. Got stickers everywhere and all kinds of yellow pens and everything. But the first 25 pages of that budget, Tom does an excellent job with definitely
Same
with Fred
on
also,
school side, yeah.
superintendent. That presentation material, I've been telling people, just go read the first 25 pages of the budget. You'll get lost in all the numbers. But if you want to understand the process and the drivers and what truly is contained in the budget with all the line items, it's that first 25 pages. So I would think out of that, we could pull some kind of slide presentation.
Yeah.
As a kickoff, good general understanding. I'm kind of assuming folks that would come to have a dialogue about the budget they've got certain areas they want to discuss and are versed in it in some manner, so that's what I would think.
Yeah.
I think we could even just leverage the deck that Tom and Jeff presented. Like, I think that's kind of the summary of those 25 pages. So we might not even need to create anything new. We might just take that. I mean, maybe there might be one or two other slides we might want to add, but I think, Ken, my recollection is a lot of what they covered is that,
That's right.
that
Yeah.
upfront stuff.
That's
Sorry,
right.
Counselor Scyther, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. That's exactly the approach I would take. I would just pull from that deck that we've already seen, you know, the high points, the budget drivers, and then, you know, 4 weeks from now, we'll be able to provide an update. And that's one of those like soft launch places where we can say, oh, hey, the Anthem numbers came in.
Right.
You know, and so here's an update on that. And, you know, to add another slide of just things in motion that we now know the answer to.
Yeah.
You know, but beyond that, like just literally like 4 slides,
Yep.
kind of just to welcome everybody to the conversation and then open it up to questions.
So who would put that together? Oh, saying to push work on the staff. Like, when I always say that, I look at us, like, we could do it, but
I think that the comment about repurposing the slide deck, I think the work's largely already done.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's a lot.
So with that part up.
Did we, April, do you remember, did we have, like, I know Tom and maybe the former superintendent did attend some of these, but again, we're not asking that of town staff to deliver anything for these, right? Or is it more, again, if we have those slides and we know the talk track, we should be able to present them and have the conversation. We might need somebody to help us logistically to like run the meeting, but that might be the only ask we have for town staff and school staff.
Yep. Yeah, I actually think that this is one of those times when it furthers that message that this budget is now the council and the board's budget, right? The superintendent and the town manager have handed it to your elected officials. Those are the people that are standing in front of you, ready to talk about our budget.
Mhm.
And yeah, the assistant superintendent, assistant town manager was there to facilitate and, you know, take notes. But beyond that, nobody from the town or school side, staff wise.
So did you actually do this once, or was it Larissa?
This was Larissa. Yeah, so she essentially took notes that went into a larger FAQ or Q&A document that was unreleased. So I think that was a good takeaway.
A lot of, I'll get back to you.
There's probably a fair amount of I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good point though. Like, do we want somebody, like, how do we want to handle the note taking to capture the questions that maybe we can answer? Is that just the responsibility of the counselor and school board member just to collectively capture those questions so that we can bring those back to town staff to help answer? Or
I would be very surprised if someone from town staff wasn't in attendance for all 4 of these.
okay,
I think that you can rely on a secretary of sorts.
okay, I think that would just be good to know that we have somebody doing that so that we can pull it all together. In terms of participation, right? Like at a minimum, we would want 1 counselor and 1 school board member. That doesn't mean others can't attend if they have interest or want to be there just to hear. I'm gonna assume that because we're all communications committee and finance committee, that the 3 of us will likely participate in one of these at least. Is that a fair assumption, or is that something that, do we need to solicit other council volunteers as well? Ken, I see you kind of scratching your ears, so something's telling me.
I'll definitely attend. I don't know if I'll do all 4, to tell you the truth. I'll tell you what, I'll do the in-person ones for sure. Virtual doesn't do a thing for me.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know if that's your preference, because then we can just make sure you get the in-person one.
Yeah, remember where John Cucci is gone, that is in the time frames we're talking, so we're down to two councils.
Okay. Is he gone that whole 2 weeks, that whole 2 week stretch? I know he's gone the week of the 20th. I can't remember if he's gone the other week.
He's gone the same week you are and the week after that,
Is he? He's gone
2 weeks.
next week and school vacation week?
When are you leaving? I really
Friday.
can't remember.
And
'Cause I know
I'm
we're not gonna
actually,
have another council meeting until May because of his absence, unless something urgent comes up. Because they don't want me running the show.
Not exactly what a conflict.
yeah,
No, it's not.
I'm
I
actually,
Go
sorry, I was
ahead.
gonna say, I'm actually gonna be, I have this for conversation for us tomorrow, April, for the finance agenda, but I'm gonna be out of town for work travel to the week of the 26th, or starting on the 26th. So that's gonna be a challenge for me unless it's hybrid. Or I probably would have to also represent during the week of the 17th, whichever, whether it's in person or hybrid or virtual, I'm flexible.
We'll figure all
I
that
think,
out.
I think
Yeah.
between the three of us and Dawn and Jean, I mean, Jean Marie has done this.
Yeah.
Like the year, that year in, that one I'm thinking of that happened in 2019. I don't know what the circumstances were or the dynamics on the council were, but everybody did one. Like there was, it was, it was not a request.
Yeah.
Everybody had to sign up for one. So Jean Marie is very familiar with this. I don't know necessarily, what the value that everybody places as far as the council is concerned or the school board is concerned, but I know that people have been asked to participate before. I
And
think
you can have the same person
Yeah.
in more than one session.
and no,
We'll have
no.
it covered.
Let's go to all four. if we have to. Bring
So
Penelope.
April, so I heard
To the
April's gonna
roundtable.
do all 4 for the council. Is that what I heard? Yeah.
What did you hear? We're sorry.
April's gonna do all 4 for the council. But
That's what I heard too.
yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, school board, any concerns from you guys about availability, attendance, participation to make sure we have a school board member at one of each of these?
No, I don't think so. No,
Someone will be
we'll
there.
figure
Figure
it
it
out.
out.
Be there.
Probably
Okay.
not
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And all it literally is present some slides and then open it up for conversation, right? And so we're not gonna try and do anything beyond that in these forums. It's just another opportunity for people to ask questions or share views on things so that the elected officials can take that into consideration in addition to our other venues like our public hearings, our finance committee meetings, et cetera.
Okay, I just want to continue the conversation if we may get it there. I think we had one bullet on here as the agenda item. So lessons learned from the council corner meeting, I would like to fold into this beforehand, right? If it's going to be a 2-hour meeting, it's going to be a 2-hour meeting.
Mhm.
The facilitator, which I don't know, it is, to me, in corporate world, the role of facilitator is pretty well defined. Conversation is a conversation, but sometimes things do go off the rails. And I think we have to be aware of that. If you've had discussions with budget with people in the street, things can, it's an emotional topic, especially I think this year with rapid inflation and a published 7% increase in taxes. That's going to drive the conversation. I'm not saying that's where we're going to end up. So is it understood that a facilitator would try to not shut it down? I'm trying to be gentle, but if you know me, I'm not gentle. I just don't want somebody getting up and doing an 8-10 minute dissertation. Okay? Or tell me they're getting taxed out of the town for 20 minutes. All valid concerns, but really not relevant at the task in the end. And I'm just trying to proactively anticipate type thing and know who to look to diffuse that type of thing.
Yeah.
Is that worth the discussion? Yes.
So if I'm distilling down your feedback, Councilor Johnson, I believe what you're
see.
suggesting I think what you're suggesting is that just as a note for these budget meetings, you'd like the expectations for attendees to be well defined ahead of time. Is that fair?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then we'll have a full debrief on the counselor corner, I expect later on the agenda.
Yes.
Mhm. I think that's a good call out, Ken. And I think one of the things that we, or at least I was prepared to do, but I just didn't do for the Counselor Corner Live was kind of just set some ground rules for the meeting that we can, again, reinforce when we kick things off to say, this is why we're here, you know, please be respectful, whatever are the right ground rules we want to set. You know, the concern you have around, you know, other people might be here, so let's just be respectful of other people's time. So like, if you can try and be concise, but make sure you're heard, please do so. But if things go on for too long, we might have to move on so that we give everybody the same opportunity to participate. So I feel like some of that could be stage setting. Like, not only should it be communicated as part of the event, to your point, to get ahead of it, but also like some stage setting at the beginning, just to make sure people are respectful of what we're trying to do.
How do we feel about 90 minutes? I think that's, yeah, I think 90 minutes. I think 2 hours is too long. I think we set it at 90 minutes, and as it gets closer to the 90-minute mark, we say, here are some, you know, a counselor and the board members say, you know, thank you all for coming. These are, you know, these are my highlight takeaways for this evening. And at, you know, 90 minutes, we thank everybody for their time and we cut it off. John and I had kind of said before Counselor Corner Live that we were going to just let people, when we saw how many people had come, that we were not going to hold everybody to an hour. There was just no way. But I think 90 minutes for one of these things, I think we'll find that that is ample time.
Right, because there'll be more than one also. So,
Yes,
right, if we keep
yes.
level setting that, folks
Yes.
didn't get a chance, they can
You can attend
attend
another
the next
one.
one. or-
Yeah,
I just didn't know if this was the forum to discuss it, because I don't
Sure.
think we're meeting again before we do this,
this.
correct?
yeah, correct.
Okay.
Well taken.
Any other thoughts from the school board? So I feel like we have a good plan. So it sounds like Liam's going to kind of logistically map out for us like what we're going to do in terms of, or what our options are in terms of those 4 different meetings, the 4 different options. We'll work as collective bodies to make sure they're staffed with, you know, a counselor and a school board member. The deck is a simple taking Tom and Jeff's deck, maybe simplifying it. We do need to think through ground rules a little bit, which could also be part of what's communicated out to the public as we promote these. And then again, I think just do some stage setting, and we'll keep it at 90 minutes, or at least try and not go up to 90 minutes for some of these. I anticipate some might take the full 90 minutes, and then some might be done a lot faster than 90 minutes. So 90 minutes feels like good for the long end, but I have a feeling the first one or the first couple, where it really depends on the audience, right? Who participates and what questions they ask, that's going to drive whether it's going to be fully needed or not. I'm sure one of the meetings will go a full 90 minutes, but I suspect the rest probably won't go that long.
Smart taxes will make sure that a packed house.
I will take that first section.
Yeah. All right. Any?
This is nothing to be intimidated by. For anybody who has not done this yet, this is nothing to be intimidated by.
No.
This is a good opportunity to connect with the community. For the most part, people are very lovely. They have legitimate questions and concerns, and you know, they want to have access to their elected officials, and I think that's great. And you know, we'll go into this with a glass half full.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to be able to do these again.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that the pulse of the community is that people really are craving this. So
Mhm.
hopefully they'll be well
We've been
attended.
hearing that,
Yeah.
for sure.
Have you
Yeah.
done?
And I
Right,
heard
any-
from several people after the other meeting that were very pleased with it.
Yeah,
They
I
felt
watched it.
heard.
That was a great meeting.
Anything else on this topic before we move on to the next one? Anything anything, Jenna, Jillian, or Kristen, you might want to add?
I don't have anything right now. I'm looking forward to doing it.
Okay.
Chance to see everybody, an actual chance to get the feedback. I'm going in with no expectation. So, yeah, whatever comes, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Won't hurt.
That's a good perspective.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and frankly, when it came to Counselor Corner Live, right, that was kind of the perspective we went in with, was like, let's just go in, let's hear what people have to say, and let's, take that and respond to it. And I think that worked out well, like that approach. So I think Jenna doing that and like really just not overthinking like what we need to do, what we need to prepare is really kind of, I think, what people are looking for. They're looking for that authentic opportunity, like April said, to engage their elected officials and have an opportunity to share some of their thoughts. So I think it's a good approach.
Yep, did the slides that Tom and Jeff presented, did they include anything about the CIP? Is that going to be, like, I anticipate questions about the CIP budget?
It does have some CIP.
It's just a high level overview
Okay.
in terms of magnitude. It's going really into any detail of projects. So we want to drill down into that.
Yeah, we can prep a budget book if we need to get thrown into any detail. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just know that always comes so much later in the.
In the budget process, yeah. And
Right.
we're gonna have our table setting meeting tomorrow night for the finance committee to lock down the budget calendar and make sure that we're comfortable with the order and the flow and which departments are coming to us when, but I think everyone should anticipate CIP will be at the end.
Mhm. And that might just be a way to kind of, again, I think for us, we could just defer some of those to that conversation or to that particular meeting time, whenever that's scheduled. So that way, if people want to hear more, yeah. That's usually the last thing we do. And I think this year it's like at least tentatively on May 10th. So it'll be after we have these conversations.
But again, if constituents want to speak to the CIP, then you sit there and you say, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I will make a point to let the finance chairs know that that's something that you would like to discuss, and you just kind of be a facilitator in that way.
Yep.
Good.
All right, great. So then if we're good with discussion on this item, the next item is to get an update on the budget communications plan. So I've asked Allison, since we have the school board in attendance, just to kind of give another overview of the plan so that everybody has a view, since it's a collaborative process between both the schools and the town to work on communication.
I'm pulling this up for Allison.
Yep, this is just a refresher of what we talked about last time and kind of what the town manager spoke to in his budget presentation last week. But when it comes to the town budget, the theme that we are communicating out with over the next few months will be responding to community needs. And that came about largely in part with last year's work with the community survey last fall and the priority focus areas that came out in that from residents. And so the focus areas that most directly align with some budget items are the affordability of town services, traffic and concerns about traffic and transportation, and then overall infrastructure maintenance. So there's a lot in the budget that directly relates to each of those. So over the next few months, it's going to be, I'll start with taking the overview, making sure that the budget document and presentation of the budget from last week is accessible for people, just providing the links, repetition of them being able to see it and know how to access the budget portal from the website. And then in the meantime, it'll be developing content around those focus areas and the key highlights. And so that'll be incorporated through some video production, some leader articles on specific topics, and then ongoing social posts. Layered in with that will be kind of showing what the meeting schedule is and any finance committee updates that have come out those meetings and the department reviews. So that part is kind of in flux as it's happening. And that'll kind of carry us into May. But that starts this Thursday with, we're planning on doing the budget overview newsletter that we started last year too. So I'm gonna very much pull from the template that we put together last year, and it opened up, like I was just saying, like the town budget overview and just making sure people have that available to them, and then pulling out the key highlights, and then it'll switch to the school side and pull out the kind of the theme of COVID recovery response that the superintendent was talking about, and moving forward from there. And then it can also pull out the key highlights and any other communications that you want in there and education points, and then showing the meeting schedule. So that's how it starts, and it's very much like in process right now, early stages, but everything trying to align with the theme of responding to community needs.
You know, is it too much effort to actually put these roundtables in that schedule after we get them?
Yeah,
really
so that's a
defined?
good point. So this next slide is another one that we had worked on last year.
Yep.
Where it shows, it's hard to read right now, but the
Yep.
basic concept visually is showing that the top line is like opportunities for communication. So newsletters that are already set in place, different dates in the leader weeks that we can have articles, including council corner articles and the in the know column. And then the bottom line is all of the meetings that are coming up. And so it kind of shows the cross section of where they overlap. But to your point, Ken, we should add in the roundtables to that bottom row to show, and that'll help us visually see then, like, where it
Okay,
fits
nice.
in.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, it's busy,
It's
but if
busy,
you take a deep breath
Take
and
a
look
look
at it,
at
it tells
it,
you a
yeah.
lot.
and it kind of shows, I color coded, it kind of shows like different voices too. Like it's not just town, it's town,
Right.
school, counselors. There's opportunities for communications coming from different areas.
So you, on the school side, you'll also build a similar like theme, because of the theme that Fred did.
Well, that's what
going
I'm
on.
interested in hearing
Right.
too about, like how much you all wanted to collaborate and develop content. How much am I just, I can, at the bare minimum, I can showcase all of the meetings that are happening, especially as they're coming up. But also we can take what's developing in this newsletter this week and then pull that out and spread it throughout. We could designate in the know column for the next couple months. So it's just a matter of how much involvement.
Yeah, because I thought, if I recall, I thought the superintendent did a great job also, and he had a very similar, because you pulled that right out of Tom's, right, I mean, the theme,
Yeah,
and the superintendent
and he
had a
has,
similar
yeah,
one,
yep,
which I thought was great, they're bullet items, you
aligned
can
with the school side.
read it, and it aligns with the budget underneath, so
Yeah.
maybe that's probably all we need to do is pull that out. I'm sorry, I'm not on school board. I'm sorry.
Well, this is awesome, great, and I think that it's wise to coordinate that way. I don't want to tell you how to, what you want to do. What is your thought on that?
So, one of the difficult things is trying to get a meeting in place before our next thing that we're doing, just to hit all the bullet points. And I do want to reach out to Kate Bolton first and kind of find out what the biggest talking points would be for us to highlight. That would make it as simple and effective and concise when we communicate. So try to get something to speak for, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Like what we do.
Yeah.
Because I know we also want to meet up Wednesday. Yes.
And so, and we can talk about that. For sure. What are your thoughts on how we go about this? I mean, I think that we need to spend a lot of time into our end of this. I mean, it is a huge portion of the budget, and I think that the superintendent does a great job, but that we have to play a role, obviously, as well. So what we put out, the district newsletter, put it out there.
Mhm.
Yeah. 'cause we
Yeah,
just-
it's a
we
different
just-
audience,
Yeah.
I think Ken's right, like, what Jeff has in there is really good. We just need to
Yeah.
pull it out and put it into the different
Yeah.
formats that sort of fit in the
Would
schedule.
you do that? Would you like Allison just to pull it out and put it in like a similar, could you go back to that first one? Just-
We will take any help we can get.
That would-
Okay, so maybe guys-
Because on the schedule, we're all on the schedule, right? So,
Yeah.
forgive me, the schedule I think is fine. The BOE this, town this, BOE that. I think just this for newsletters, right? Because you guys have your own mechanisms to communicate. We'd like to fold in the whole budget into our communication, regardless if it's school or town.
Right.
So small, concise stuff like this, very informational for the town. I think it would have same value for the school.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the theme that we've adopted on this side is this responding to community need theme. What was the theme that I mean, certainly there are probably aspects of the school budget that we could fit into that, but what was the thematic? It was kind of dealing with the COVID cliff, right? Is that sort of
Yeah, I
the-
think that's a lot of it, sort of what happened, what we had to respond to in the last 2 years, and sort of how we're easing back into
Yeah.
our normal day-to-day stuff, and also still dealing with
The key, though,
learning loss.
if I recall, the key is the safety of the children.
It
And the
is, yeah.
education of the children, right? I mean, which is
Yeah.
simple but powerful. And like I said, I thought the superintendent did really well.
Yeah, responding to student needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it
Responding to
fits into
community
the
needs kind of
same
is
thing.
the overarching umbrella, but then like responding to student needs, I think is a lot of the budget highlights this year. And it is every
It
year. I
always
mean, it
is,
always is.
yeah,
That's
right.
literally your
Right,
job.
right, yeah,
but
right. But the needs are pretty big.
I mean,
Right.
there's a
And they've
significant
changed.
Yeah.
change and they
COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always the student needs. I think what's changed over time is the way we communicate that. Kind of keep it simple, but salient to everybody and simple. The numbers will never change. You want to get down in the budget, you're still looking at line items, so.
I pulled out some key points from his presentation last week, so I can kind of formulate that into how I would like to see it displayed in the newsletter and maybe pass that along to you all as kind of like prompts or directions to go, but we're not tied to that at all.
I think that would be hugely
Yeah.
helpful, and
Yes,
also
yeah.
if you can just give us any deadlines that you know that you have, so
Okay,
we actually know when to make sure. we
yeah,
have
and I'll
everything
send
we
that
need.
sample newsletter from last year too, just for comparison.
And I think just this slide and whatever the slide becomes for the schools, like I'm pretty sure a lot of this was in the presentation from Tom's perspective and what Tom shared. But I think if we have these two slides for what we had just talked about when we do these roundtables, I think these are really good slides, at least for us. I love this slide in terms of highlighting some key investments or decisions that are being made in response directly to the survey. And so having the counselor be able to like have this slide, or again, if it's captured is great, but having something that the school board can complement it with would be awesome.
I watched your last communications meeting too, and I know that you guys had a discussion about tying your budget back to your council goals and your survey and the comp plan, and I think that we're sort of trying to look at that from our perspective too, and how our asks, like where they come from and how they tie back to the school's larger goals.
As always, Allison, great job.
Yes, the best.
All right, so are we good with the budget plan update to move on to the next item?
I think so, John.
Okay, where did I put the agenda? All right, so for our school board attendees, you guys are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or if you need to pop out, feel free to do it. We still have a couple more items that we need to cover. So the next item, item 6, is Counselor Corner. Postmortem.
Oh, sounds great. If you guys,
Thanks, guys.
You're very welcome. You're very
this is
welcome.
an
Thank you
official
for
agenda,
coming.
isn't it? A postmortem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will we benefit from this?
We're not
I
sure
should
we're
have
gonna
said
benefit.
I should have said debrief. I just was like, maybe I was in like
No.
a down
Your heart was in the
moment.
right place,
Yeah.
John. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I
So-
like the term, I like it.
So what I was thinking for this, sometimes when we do, debriefs or postmortems, we kind of think through the mindset of start, stop, and continue as like the 3 things to think about as we kind of reflect back on the way something went. So I just think for those of us in the room, including Liam, Allison, and Tracy, like, again, looking back at the event, what would we do differently? That's kind of the start. What would we stop based on what we learned? Like, that's maybe not value add. And what would we want to make sure we continue to do that we thought was a success? So I can share my screen so I can just like capture some of the thoughts so that we're just capturing them live as we kind of share. I put some stuff in there myself.
Let's switch sides of the table. Tracy.
Where did it go? Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can kind of kick things off, and maybe we'll start with the continue, which is kind of more like the positive. What did we think went well? What do we want to make sure we keep doing as these potentially move forward? So in terms of continue, one of the things that the group kind of decided that we didn't really do in the meeting, but I really liked how at one point people started to say here to kind of get everybody collectively in the room sense on a comment that was made. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing that happened organically, that I think as we go forward, just like having something like that as we're having these conversations, so we can kind of get a sense of like, is this something everybody's aligned with, or is this just one person's opinion, just to help understand where people are really feeling things are of importance. Personally, I liked the room setting. I liked that it was kind of more a table with people around it, and then people around the room. Like, I just felt like it was more conducive to conversations, to kind of just set the right tone for what we were doing, versus like, again, we talked about, like, we don't want to just be sitting at the dais, the counselors, and having everybody standing behind or having to go up to the podium. It was more of a conversational setting. And then again, just the way the meeting was kind of orchestrated just to be more conversational, where we didn't come in with a lot of information in a PowerPoint that we were trying to educate or convince people on. It was more conversational. So those are kind of the things in my mind that I thought went well, that I would like to see us continue to think through and do as we advance these. So that's just like an example of how we can have the conversation. So, leaving it open to anybody else in the room, if there's anything you want to share about, things that you observed that you thought went really well, that we want to try and make sure we continue to do.
I will always go first. I don't have anything to add necessarily. I thought that all the things that you've highlighted here were definitely our successes the other night. I think the variety of seating, I probably would have liked it more if we had a table spot for everybody, but I think in the end, like, some people do kind of want to sit toward the back, and that's okay. Like, I think people for the most part were pretty comfortable. It did kind of give the illusion for a little while that, the people who were directly in front of John and I were like the primary participants. But once we kind of started forcing the around the room feeling, like, I think we were able to change that tone. I liked the I thought that probably was my favorite organic moment of the night, when they all started doing that.
I missed that.
Oh, so it was probably hard to hear on the TV version.
Couldn't
Oh,
hear anything on the TV, but.
yeah, we need to come back to that point, but if somebody in the room suggested, you know, can we have like a little bit of British Parliament style here, that if somebody makes a point that you agree with, you say aye, aye. And so you don't feel the need to repeat the point again when you speak, but it also lets everybody in the room know, you know, you agree with this person's point. And so somebody would say something and then you'd get 5 or 6 aye, aye, or,
I did
you know,
catch that
sometimes we
one.
would get an emphatic whole room aye, aye.
I think I did catch that once after
So,
somebody made a comment.
you know, so that was kind of, to John's point, it happened
Yeah.
totally organically. I thought it really added to everyone's enjoyment. I think they all felt like they were really getting to participate.
I thought it was interesting, like, people would make their comments, but then some people would ask questions of you and like your personal take on it.
Yeah.
And then there was one point when they asked, there were 2 other counselors in the room, and so they wanted to hear from all of the counselors.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you at all, or were you, is that what kind of the flow you would have?
That's actually more what I was thinking it was going to be, was I expected more getting questions from constituents and kind of wanting John and I to answer from our positions. And so the fact that that only happened a couple times actually was my surprise. But I also really enjoyed that part.
Did I misunderstand the question? What was the additional counselors?
Yeah, it's kind of 2
Yeah.
parts, but yeah, when they brought in the additional counselors, do you think they were expecting to be part of the conversation in that way?
Right, if you're in the room, you're part of the conversation.
Yeah,
That's the way that's the way I
Yeah,
was.
but, yeah, and you 2 were the hosts of it, but
Yeah.
it didn't.
I think that's when I heard my first aye, aye.
Well, I think that was, you know, I mean, I think the reason the specific question, as I remembered, was like, they were just very interested to hear what our opinions were. And again, I think then because John and Don were there, they're like, well, we want to hear from you too, your counselors. So I think I was the opposite, right? Like, I wasn't sure if we were going to get asked personal opinion questions. So I wasn't thinking that was going to be a big part of the conversation, but I did like when I was asked, because I think it like allowed me to authentically answer, right? Because I didn't know what the question was going to be. So I had to answer like as truthfully as I could, which again, I think is, you know, I think that's what people want to hear too. They want to hear more from the counselor, not just what we do up on the stand. That's like a little bit more formal, I think, but more like but what do you really think, Ken? What do you really think, April, about XYZ? Like, give it to me like you would give it to anybody for any question that they might ask you to ask your opinion on.
Back to the room
Pass
setting.
those.
Back to the room setting, I agree with you all that it seemed like nice flow and like that people could choose where they want to sit. As someone who was watching from home, it was hard, like when someone was sitting behind someone else, I couldn't see the person. It was like hard to hear kind of, and can't see the face.
Yeah.
I can't picture a different, I mean, the only other thing I can picture is like everyone sitting in a circle, but that seems kind of weird too. I don't know.
Well, that's the one question mark I had of like, was the hybrid, like, would we say, especially like for those in the room, I think we felt really good. I don't know how people who participated hybrid, if they felt as good, or was it just not as good of an experience? And should we continue these as hybrid, or should we just say if we're going to do these, they should be in person? We might air them, but maybe we don't try and cater to the virtual audience as much.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to be careful here, because I actually think your personal opinion really didn't matter in this. And I think that item, I know that was harsh, but I think before you pursue that more, I think that should be in front of the full council. Because I'm on the council, I do not vote on my personal opinion, ever. I vote for what I think is the best for the community. If somebody wants to know my personal opinion, I'll tell them to call me on the phone. Because I don't know about you, but I can see a real disconnect in you representing people at the dais in your personal opinion. So I just think maybe that should be vetted a little bit more before you accept that as a general practice of these. That's all. Because I can see some problems with that.
I think the question here, which I think is kind of like a foundational question for these meetings, is this intended to be a conversation with two elected officials or elected officials and not necessarily representing the views of the council, which is kind of how we did this one, which again, I think allows you to kind of.
You can't separate the two. I'm sorry.
Or is it representing the
Talk.
position of the council? Because again, I think that's where, you know, to me, then it's really not like, I think that's to your point though, Ken, is this an opportunity for people to ask counselors as elected officials to get their opinions on topics? Or is this intended to be the council representing the views of the council, which is a different?
But no. So if you don't mind, it's supposed to be a safe forum. Let's have that discussion. Okay. I can have a discussion with somebody as a counselor, not representing the council at all. Nothing that I have a discussion with ever represents the council. It represents me as a counselor, an independent thinking person on the council, not my personal opinion. I have voted totally contrary to my personal opinion on many issues. So again, I don't want to argue with it. I think it's a point that I think you probably hear from some other folks too. Because if you want to see what continues, and there's an easy way, it's not a deflection, it's not an avoidance. You can always answer the question, well, I as an individual counselor, this is what I think. But again, you're answering it from a different perspective.
Can I just probe into that a little bit?
Yep.
So, if the format of this is intended to be sort of an extension or virtual or live conversation with the same sort of, what was the caveat or the disclaimer that we include in Councilor Corner columns?
The opinion of the author is that of the subject.
Right. And so I just want to make sure I understand. So what you're saying is that as a citizen, as a private citizen, your opinion on an issue may differ from your position as a counselor.
Absolutely.
So that's the context. That's the distinction you're making. Okay.
So I understand the distinction that you're making. So it's at your discretion then, Ken, to give your opinion as Counselor Johnson or to give your opinion as Ken Johnson. But it's still your opinion. It's not the view of the council.
Correct.
So I think John and I both went into this thing last week saying, these are our views as individual counselors. And I don't necessarily separate like my opinion as a counselor and my opinion as a private citizen. I was definitely there saying my opinion as April Sider. Like, I don't know that I necessarily draw as hard of a line. And that's not to say I won't ever. You've been
And I'm
doing
not
this longer than I have.
criticizing it, but to give you an example, I think there was a question coming up about how do you see it as the vision for the town?
What is your vision for the town?
Right. My vision for the
very
town
direct
is the adopted, accepted, comprehensive plan. I may have a personal opinion that deviates from that. Okay. And again, if you want to know that, call me and we'll have a private discussion. But when I make a vote on an item that is benchmarked or required or constrained by the comprehensive plan, that's where my perspective comes from.
And I think that's the answer that you would have given
Right.
from your council perspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I did not speak for the council.
Right.
Okay. And I can vote either a yay or a nay on an item using that as a construct
And
in my decision.
I think we're having the same, I genuinely think we're having the same conversation.
Okay.
I think that the general public would have loved to hear that Counselor Johnson frames his decision in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Like that in and of itself is an insight into your decision making.
Correct. As an elected representative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the opinion of Councilor Johnson may be, I don't want another house to be built. I'm not
That's
saying that,
correct.
but I want another
Yeah.
house to be built in this
Then
town. so
I'm not
I
going
think
to
we're big
express
enough.
that in
Yeah.
a public opinion,
Yeah.
sitting as a counselor.
Yeah,
Group.
I
That's all,
understand.
just
That's-
further discussion, John.
No,
That's all.
Yeah.
that's,
Well, I think,
That's all.
this is
yeah,
great.
I think this is,
had not
yeah,
thought
this
about
is
it that
a,
way.
this is a nuance, right? And I think it all goes back to,
Yeah.
Leanne, what you said of like, similar to Counselor Corner, it's always the views and opinions expressed, ... right? Like, we're not here to necessarily speak on behalf and represent the council. We're here to speak on our view as the counselor, however we choose to like represent that with the public.
I do think, oh, sorry, go on. Go on, John.
So
apologize.
I just want to like look to Ken to say like, if we keep that principle and premise as part of this, is that comfortable for you, or is that something that you think is
You
still going to
actually,
be?
when you introduced the meeting, you did a great job, believe me. I watched the YouTube meeting today, thank God, because I saw a totally different meeting. Because I could hear it. No, you did a great job in the intro, and you said that. You know, we're here to answer your questions, and our answers do not necessarily reflect the body of the council. Except sometimes over the course of a 2-hour meeting, that will get lost, and probably maybe on one of the dues, have a sign, I don't know, but reiterate that on occasion, because that'll happen. But again, I didn't want it to be a contentious thing, I just heard, I get it. I'll let it go from there.
I think it's
John,
good. It's good feedback. Yeah, go ahead.
So I going back to the, you know, it's interesting. I think from my standpoint, I certainly can appreciate, I think that's your, and again, maybe there's a discussion to be held here about whether to the degree your personal opinions and preferences are different from what you feel your role and opinion and position should be as a counselor. I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have. I think that from my perspective, to add to the discussion, to sort of tease out what the position should be, I think there's real value in a forum like that, which is intended to be not so formal. It's intended to be conversational and intended to kind of, I think the way I sort of framed this Counselor Corner Live event as it's intended to close the proximity between the formality of the council and sort of have a conversation that's just residents, right? You're all residents of this community. I think there could be real value to that distinction, you know, because I think that on this issue, right, let's use this issue as sort of the case study. On this issue, I think that there's a real perception that just because the council seems to be going in this direction around being receptive to conversations around growth and having conversations about how that growth develops, the perception is that this council is pro-growth. And I think that the reality is that what I just heard from your statement is, if Ken Johnson were king for a day, I wouldn't build another house. That's what I feel. That's honestly what I feel. However, I'm compelled by the constructs of a larger system that has a comprehensive plan that took citizen input. And this was the path that this community decided to forge based on this legitimate document.
Choose you.
So I think that in terms of the people in the community who are saying you're pro-growth, that's all you want, you're not listening to us, or don't agree with us, you don't share our views. The reality is, actually, in this case, I do share your view. However, there are these other things, and I think that has a more well-rounded, open conversation and discussion to be had.
That's correct.
And so I think that am I on board, or do I agree? Do I see your perspective around there's a difference here? I think there's a nuance here on this issue, and I think that should be put on the table. Yes, and do I think it should be qualified? Absolutely. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. But I don't think it's something that, and I think there's some appreciation that I think is probably lacking, has been lacking, this larger conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, I think what made it a somewhat of a success was a little bit of the authenticity, right? That at least when April and I did respond, again, like I did try and think of it. I tried to veer too much, like far away from my opinions and just try and share more educational things when I could. but again, when we were asked directly, like, well, what do you think? Like, what's your view on this? Then again, then I felt like we had to like answer the question. But again, I only think we got asked that a couple of times. I don't think we were asked very often, like, to express our views and opinions. I think it was more just that one question. But again, like, I think our role is kind of what Liam, what you just said, of like, people might come in with a very specific thing that they care about, which is very relevant to them. And the role we can play in these forums is to say, yeah, that's an important point. However, there's also this and this and this that we're also taking into consideration. So your point is valid, but there are other things at play that we also are thinking about as we're making this decision, to really kind of help them not just see their point of view, but also some of the other things that they just might not even know about, or frankly, they might not care about either. But again, we can try and at least educate them, and maybe by answering them or responding to them, we might give a piece of information to someone else that didn't know it, that's listening and in the room as well.
No, you're right, John, I agree too. And again, watching the meeting, unfortunately, and like I said, I've heard from two people, separate people, told me that they really felt heard, really appreciated it being done, hoping there's gonna be more. And so it's definitely a positive thing. Don't think what I say is critical, but I want to get back to what you just said, especially on the growth item. I mean, that was a hot topic at a hot time that needed 20 hours, not 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? And unfortunately, an awful lot of the questions I heard in that meeting were from some very good Scarborough citizens that have beliefs based on not all the facts. And that's where I see the larger role of these items, not to challenge, not to criticize, not to make people feel they're stupid, but to really, in a genuine discussion, try to pass on additional information, not to sell them. You know, I've always said, if we all have the same set of facts, we can still reach different opinions. But it's critical that we all start with the same set of facts. And an awful lot of folks in there were not coming from the same set of facts, which is unfortunate. But I thought it was great. I hope it continues.
Yeah, in that sense, Ken, it was almost more challenging because we had so
Right.
many people come.
Right.
You know, if we had 15 people in the room, we
That'd be
probably
different, right.
could have had some more of those educational type, you know, I think John and I tried to find a balance between interjecting and listening,
You did.
you know, and so.
Your
but
explanation of the
there were
GMO and
times,
a
right?
fractionalization, you did that in about a minute, very informative.
And to your point, there were other times, there were things that got said where you're sitting there as a counselor going, oh God, oh, I want to tell
What's
you,
coming?
I want to tell you more about that. But, you know,
Right.
in the interest of making sure everybody in the room felt heard, we kind of,
Right.
swept on to the next person. And so it's finding a balance between
Yep.
making sure people who are there to speak get to speak, and inserting those kind of educational opportunities too.
When the opportunity arises, sure.
Yeah.
Can't be the whole thing, can't be a classroom.
Yeah.
Right, I get it.
Yeah. So two things in retrospect, just kind of like thinking about it, right? Like, I think in the case of growth, like maybe when we picked a topic, we could have picked a topic that wasn't quite as broad or controversial. But I
It
also
seems like
wonder.
an excellent opportunity to remind everyone that this was Paul Johnson's baby that Paul
Yeah.
adopted, and then.
Did anybody remind me of that? Yeah, thank God he's gone.
Yeah. Well, because we kind of
I'm
like
obviously
did this.
kidding, wherever you are, Paul,
Yeah.
if you're very much
Yeah.
enjoying
He's not listening.
laughing at us, yeah.
Well, and again, it's been my experience when I was in that community connections group, like the topic is really what draws people. But usually when people come to something like this, they have a strong view, right? Like we had a conversation of let's talk growth. So people who are supportive of growth probably wouldn't show up because they don't really have anything of concern, perhaps. And so what we ended up getting was a group of people who are concerned about growth, and that kind of like drove the conversation. So I think as we do these going forward. I think we want to figure out how we really get a sound representation. And again, you know, perhaps like I just don't want to draw the conclusion from this one format of 50 people that everybody feels that way in Scarborough. And so how do we ensure as we do these things that we're really trying to pull in and get, you know, a broad perspective, or just make sure, again, it's not just limited to, like, I think somebody has said it, like the vocal minority might like overtake the conversation. And again, I'm not saying that that was the case in this, but again, I think ensuring that these have balance is important going forward. But at the same time, you know, the topic is gonna, whatever it is, depending on what it is, it's gonna likely bring people who have a strong opinion about it, right?
Yeah, maybe next time we could do debate capital punishment.
Yeah.
Simple,
Really
simple,
light,
right,
yeah,
something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, something lighter. Yeah. Well, you know, I really liked, as we were closing, I liked how Allison, I think, suggested maybe the next one actually be on public engagement. Like, what is the public's preferred method of public engagement, or how would they like to be engaged? Because some of the other things that came up that again were interesting to hear, not necessarily related to growth, but like some people were sharing their concerns about like how our, not just our public meetings happen, but like even for like planning board, how they, you know, only allow 3 minutes. And so again, I think people are looking for more ways to engage, but I don't know if we know like what are their preferred methods. This counselor corner might be another like one engagement channel, but are there other things that people wish they could do to better engage the town that, you know, maybe are simple things we could make available if we just knew what those were?
It'd be a good topic.
I think unless we pick a hot topic, there's gonna be 6 people sitting in that
I
room.
don't know how many would go to that.
And we
Yeah.
have plenty of hot topics.
Do
Yeah.
we? What would be another one? Ken?
Some that I wouldn't even
This is
mention.
an agenda item, future, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Future topics. I think we should have an environmental one. I think Jamie's conservation, you know, when she kind of pulled resources to satisfy the requirement of that application. I think people want to come and talk about land conservation and the environment in Scarborough. I think that would be a really interesting one.
Traffic would be another one.
What are we gonna get though? I mean, I don't mean to say that sounded combative. We're gonna get people who come and tell us how much they hate the traffic.
Well, because a lot of people hate traffic.
Well, right, so what is the
But it also
conversation?
gives them
An
the
awful
opportunity.
lot of part of traffic that people just don't understand. Like I said, I'm not talking about selling people. I think a majority of the people would be blown away if they understood that 30% of the traffic on Route 1 is people avoiding $1.50 on 95. Okay, we've done that study and that's confirmed. It's not growth. You said it very eloquently. We have surrounding communities. Everybody is growing. We have beautiful beaches. We can't put the gates up. Personal opinion, I'd like to, but I wouldn't say that publicly.
Personal opinion all over here.
But I really like.
And that one doesn't really get me all fired
But
up.
then there's a lot of misunderstanding about the TMP and what's going to do. It's not going to stop
Sure.
traffic. It's just going to make traffic more efficient. And when traffic is more efficient, you notice the traffic less because you're getting to where you need to go
Yeah.
in the same amount of time if there were 10 cars versus 100 cars on the road. So, right, I'm not saying the next one would do that, but we're kicking around like the environment's very good.
No, I love your traffic idea.
Because
Ken. I just don't
don't
wanna
dare
do that
try
one.
to develop anything near a
Well,
piece of grass.
You know, even though I'm sure it'll, you know, bring a lot of frustrated people, like again, when it comes to traffic, like the reason I like it, Ken, was because it was the priority from the survey. So it's kind of like I love the theme we're doing for budget around responding to customer needs. And I almost view this Counselor Corner Live as an opportunity, like almost these are almost like focus groups in a way where we're able to kind of say, hey, we know you don't like traffic, but this didn't really tell us like, what are your pain points? Where are your pain points? Like, is it Route 1? Is it like tell us traffic about your in your neighborhood. Like, is that a concern? Like, to dig a little bit deeper into the topic. So again, that one might require a little bit more probing than just like, hey, come and share. It might require a little bit more trying to like ask some questions to the public to try and get some feedback. So I could see this one actually drawing people, but I think we would have to like structure it to figure out how we're trying to get the best information out of them. That's
And
gonna
like,
help
that
us.
would be for like a focus group. I would not want to invite somebody promoting TMP.
Mhm.
So.
I
this is-
added housing affordability because I feel like that was another thing in the survey. Sorry to interrupt you, April, that I
No,
feel
no,
like.
not at all. I was gonna go off topic, so by all
Okay.
means, let's keep on this stuff.
Okay, so we talked about some continue. What about, let's get into start. So again, these are the things that maybe we observed that if we continue to do these, we need to consider as we go forward. So I had, again, some feedback I thought I heard was that the OWL was difficult at getting people's comments in the room. So is there a way we could have like a mic or something that could be shared so people can hear online? I heard there was some confusion, I think, because the Zoom wasn't readily available. So some people were like, at least reached out to me and were like, is this going to be hybrid? Is it just going to be in person? Where's the link? And so I don't know if we need to just follow suit and just do what we normally do when we add a link and a registration link so people can, find it and put it on their calendar or whatever they do with it. One thing I don't think we did, maybe we did and I just don't know, but we didn't really collect attendee information, like with a sign-in sheet or even just get their emails, which again, in retrospect, it would be nice to just like follow up with folks, or again, as we do these again, either we could add them to the e-newsletter or just, when we do our next one, promote it directly to those people who participated to say, hey, you came last time. If you're interested, come, we're doing another one on the environment if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, John,
yeah.
while you're right there though, just, I agree with that. Just make a note on that optional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Then-
but we should have at least supplied a sign-in
Yes,
sheet. and
if you want to
encourage-
sign up
yeah.
here and, let people know.
That was just a slip. We
Yeah.
just.
Yeah.
didn't
And
think
then
of it
Ken,
in
to your point earlier about budget, like we probably should be realistic on time frame for whatever we're covering and try and stick to it as best we can. Consider timing. So I think there was some feedback that we received that starting at 5:30 wasn't conducive to parents. So again, I think that's something to consider is like, would it have been better to have started later? Leave it up to you guys if you think that's something to consider. Again,
You just have to keep in mind, I'm just going to interrupt while you're on the bullet. That's all, John.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We just have to keep in mind staff time on this, because we love our staff.
Mhm.
We want them to go 7 to 9. Maybe they'll take a half a day off that
Yeah.
day or something. You know what I mean? It's a long day for staff.
Mhm. And then I captured, Allison, I think what you were saying, or somebody said about how the OWL made it hard to see people for people virtual. So it's just not necessarily conducive to that. And then Ken, your point about reiterating throughout the dialogue that the views and opinions expressed are those of the individual, not necessarily those of the council.
I got
Any
a
other
couple
things?
others.
Go ahead.
It's going to be done in the Ken way, not all that sensitive. Probably, because are you considering ground rules here in start, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Because when I chimed into the meeting, I waited 7 minutes for the first person to get done reading about a 12-page entry.
yeah.
Okay, and everybody has a title to their own opinion. But I would really stress, it's supposed to be a discussion. I just wouldn't accept any written thing in the record. If you want to come talk, express your opinion, as clumsy as it be, please do that. But don't come and try to read something in the record like that.
I'm gonna push back a little bit,
Yep.
just because I think some people get nervous and they like to have their talking points written down. I agree with you, that wasn't the overall feel that we were going for. I think that that was the exception to the rule in terms of how most people engage.
Correct.
And so I think it's probably maybe not aggressive might not be the right word, but I think it's probably over the top to say, don't do that, because I think it was the minority.
Yeah.
I think most people just came ready to talk.
What do we think about?
That was a rough way to start.
Ground rules? I mean, I think that we should articulate what the vision for the format is. So this is intended to be conversational and not formal. If you have a statement you'd like to make, we ask that it be brief, something brief to start a conversation.
Sure.
And because I think really, I think that the prepared statements, I think that you could even say in the description, in the event you have a more developed written statement you'd like to provide, we encourage you to provide that to the town council, or otherwise summarize it for the purposes of this format. Just be respectful of time, and there are other ways to convey that.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
it did kind of like, to your point, like there was a lot to unpack in that first statement. The benefit though, I think of it was because it put everything out there, I think it made everybody else more comfortable to say, oh, and that, and let's talk about that. So I think there was value in it, but I do think that's like April said, that was not the intent. And I think, Liam, to your point, just reiterating, like if they strongly want to share a long statement, that their best course would be to make sure that they send that to the council. But if they could just summarize, try and be as concise as possible so that we can really make sure we hear everybody, I think that would be the preferred method, like not to come prepared with a long statement. But again, to April's point, some people are just more comfortable reading off of something, not comfortable public speaking. So I wouldn't want to discourage them from having something written if that's what's comfortable for them. But I think brevity and trying to be concise is important.
Well, let's just expand on that, and then I'm gonna let it die, because I had a real issue with it, because it was full of misinformation and disinformation. In a conversation, you can have somebody come up and state the same facts, but I also have a right to respectfully engage in a conversation with that individual and maybe take it as an opportunity to correct the record or their understanding, not make them feel bad for the way they think or whatever, but gives them some facts. You can't do that after a long thing like that. And it's already out in the atmosphere, polluted, and you're right. There were an awful lot of questions that followed up on that was based on misinformation and disinformation. So again, that's just my point of view. I think you're going to hear about that from more counselors, that not be done. But said, item for discussion.
Well, I like what you're saying about like if people do come prepared, like that situation, maybe how we handle it going forward is like, hey, if you have a point you want to make with a question, stop and let's have the conversation, as opposed to reading a 2-page document that again, for me, I'm like trying to take notes to be like, wait, these are the topics that she brought up. So these are the things.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean, I think that's good feedback, Ken, because I think we need to just, again, if we want it to be conversational, right, which is ultimately what we want to do, having people go on those long pointed positions makes it difficult to be able to like actually respond and have that conversation. So I agree. I think this is just something we have to think about as we go forward and set expectations with the public, just to say, hey, this is conversational. We want you to come and ask your questions and make your points, but like, let's do it in a conversational way so that we can make sure we can educate on top of listen, right? Which is difficult if somebody comes with a 2-page document that they're reading from.
I also think, John, in terms of building off the expectations, I know that there's another attendee who I think had the expectation that they could ask questions and they would get answers on the spot. And I think that they expressed some frustration with not having their specific question responded to. So again, I think that it made it difficult when it was sort of after an extended statement with a number of questions that this isn't intended to be, here's a page written on what I think, and here's 9 questions I expect you to respond to. I mean, that's not That's not how conversations work. And so I think, just delicately reminding people that, if you have a question that you want to respond to or you want to start a conversation with, that's really the point. It's not this exhaustive list of Q&A to a captive council or audience. This isn't you're not on the stand. And so, again, I think there's probably a way that we can articulate our vision or expectations for how this is intended to go. If people have like 9 questions to ask, you can submit those and either staff or counselors can respond at their leisure.
Yep, I think that's a good point.
Liam's always got the answers. It's that HR flavor he's got.
Yeah.
Allison
Can,
maybe before the meeting on what to say. So
Can you-
she might have a good point.
Ken, you said you had some other things. So what else do you have from a start perspective?
No, did I say some other things? No, I didn't really mean some other things.
I'll chime in with something. If we're talking about people who go on for a long time, it would have been helpful, like, as someone viewing again from the outside, maybe it wasn't like this there, but to kind of hear like a recap of key points that someone made, or like if it's going around to so many people, you kind of like lose sight of like maybe like a regroup of like, okay, now we're talking about not like necessarily a prompt, but almost like you're showing that you're listening and you're pulling out the highlights. And so it's like a way to get yourself more organized.
That's a good point. Kind
Yeah, I
of
think
forces
that,
you to do the notes.
and is that something the town councilor, like whoever's sponsoring, like that would be kind of, and I think part of that's a great call out. I think this goes back to April's other observation of, I don't think we were anticipated that many people. And so
Right.
at one point I was just like, let's just let everybody go so we can like hear everybody and then move on, because it was at like the 2-hour mark. So I think
John, you were way outnumbered too. There's no way that people are going to survive that mob if you started going point
It was
for
actually
point.
a very civil group.
It was lovely.
It was.
Yeah.
Which is really all you can ask.
Yeah.
Anything you want, just be civil, and they were very.
April, anything from you from a start perspective or things we want to do differently?
No, I do have a question kind of from like a whole council perspective. I don't know where it fits into this conversation, but I'm hearing some concern, I think, from Ken and maybe via other counselors that the participation from other counselors, that they maybe don't share our same vision, or who would necessarily lead the next one? Are we opening this up to the full council and saying, do you volunteer to do one of these? Like, what is the future of doing this from a whole council perspective?
So one of the
Let me
things
answer
that, one of the things I had gone back and forth with John on and suggested after we did our start, stop, continue is maybe have a workshop to share this conversation and just really get some alignment more broadly with the council on this forum and just positions on general public engagement. It was a little surprising to me, not surprising, but like when we had our last meeting where we were talking about the changes in our charge, just the reaction and the feedback that I got personally for me was a little bit surprising to hear people felt strongly about, or strongly like had some concerns about adding the word engagement into our charge, which I think to your point, April, means like we need to find an approach that we all collectively agree to is how we want to do engagement. If this isn't the right format, or if we need to make tweaks to this format to get it to a point where people feel comfortable and we have consensus, I think we need to work there. And I think a workshop would be good. I just don't know when we would want to do that. And I don't know, Ken, based on this conversation, like what I was going to do after this was kind of like try and synthesize these notes a little bit more and share it with the council just to say, here's what we talked about, here's what we think. Do you think this is worth getting on a future agenda for a workshop for us to kind of have more of a collective conversation on?
Well, we all know how you like workshops, Joe. Yeah, I mean, I just think in my general sense of the sentiment, that's all it is, a general, and we all know what that means. is that I do believe it would be why it behoove everybody that before a topic is defined, it passes muster through the council. And I really think that's the only sticking point
Okay.
is the topic. Okay, I think if any of the councilors were either there or watched, wouldn't have a problem with the format. I thought it was very engaging. Couldn't ask for better, really. I think it may just have been the topic on this that made people a little not nervous, but question. I think that was the only missing part, John. So I don't know if you need a workshop on that. I think you could articulate it quite well as the chair of the communication committee, solicit feedback, and then when the communication committee comes up with ideas on the next topic, just get the blessing from the council.
We can make it as a recommendation.
Yes,
coming out of
we
this.
recommend this,
Yep.
you approve. We did that with the survey,
perfect
remember?
feedback.
Right,
Yep.
I think that was
So
missing.
yeah, I like that. So as we whenever the next topic is, we just make it an action item for the council, just to kind of put it out there, allow for discussion, and just hopefully get agreement that
With a
that's the
survey,
topic.
right?
I think that's a good parallel to
Yeah.
make the linkage.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I know we're going almost on 2 hours. Sorry, guys. Let's try and get through this quickly, but in terms of stop, is there anything that you guys would say, like, let's not do that again? Because it either wasn't a good idea, didn't work, or just something that we learned through executing. Liam, Allison, you guys as well, any thoughts you guys have?
I think, again, I think that just due to the size of it, I think that it was difficult. I know we had a handful of questions and comments in the chat. I think I probably would disable the Q&A for the next one if people want. I mean, the whole point is to have a conversation. If you have questions that you just want to submit in writing and have be responded to, then again, I think there's probably other formats for that. I think in terms of the ground rules, again, I guess this is going back to just the expectations. I think we sort of said on the outset that we had a hybrid audience. I might make that more deliberate, that we're going to alternate kind of comments. So everyone kind of has that shared expectation, going one from the audience, one online. Those are my only, beyond everything else that's already been discussed, I think that's the only other thing I'd say.
You did a good job. Thank you for that too. Can we go online? Can we go online? Because I think it was really hard, and that was what I anticipated, because there were so many people there. It was easy to forget. Like, I don't think I looked at the screen once because I was too busy looking at the room, and having you there kind of monitoring that is really helpful. Anything else from a stop perspective that anyone wants to share?
No, but you know what, I have one other thing, just as thought, and I've got this sticking point in my head. I thought, but a lot of folks, we don't have a lot of folks don't engage even come to meetings because it's intimidating. This building is intimidating. It is. We all know that. Maybe a different location on the next one. Again, the public safety building is so inviting. My group, 75 of us, we're all elderly. Very, very comfortable with the public safety building. There's not a dais. There's not the formality. It's a room that's well serviced with a restroom right there and water and everything. It's lit bright. And it's open with windows so you can see the outside. I would think maybe just as a thought, when they do the next one, don't do it here. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it here. If you have an option to do it at the public safety building, I would say that. Entertain that idea.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
wondering
I
if
think
it
it's a good
still
point.
could it be aired on cable TV or on YouTube Live without access to the cable?
It can, because we didn't end up using that at all. We just used an owl on my laptop. So again, the owl, I understand, is something we need to kind of work through.
And it's the Zoom meeting that syncs up with YouTube Live, so it doesn't need to be.
Right, but it is, but public cable.
That was a challenge, you gotta talk to Peter
And they
about.
couldn't-
Right.
when
But I
they
think
hear
you
us
can-
anyway,
I think he can air the YouTube live stream
on public cable.
on
Yeah,
public cable
Yeah.
live.
we must be able to, we lived in.
Other than that,
Okay.
John, I thought it was a huge success. I'm pretty sure, that's the feedback you'll get from everybody, I would think.
Allison, do you know with the Facebook Live airing, was there a lot of people watching on Facebook Live? Like, was that necessary? Was that a nice to do, but didn't really get much viewership? I don't know if that's something you can.
Not doing Facebook Live. We had the capability to do it, but given that it was the first one and that we had it on the YouTube live stream, we stuck with that same format. And then I just posted the YouTube live link on
Okay.
Facebook Live. So we didn't have Facebook.
I
Okay.
ended up doing that in the 11th hour. I think that Facebook Live, again, a lot of the value to that is sort of the chat interactive feature. And I didn't have any expectation I'd be able to manage that. in
Oh,
addition
yeah.
to Zoom chat and everything else. So it's something that, again, in the future might make some sense. I guess I'm not familiar enough with YouTube or with Facebook Live to know whether that's redundant with Zoom and YouTube
But to your point, I think it's probably very hard to manage.
Yeah.
We did look-
Everything else we're trying to do.
Yeah, we did look ahead of time to see if you can disable the chat on Facebook Live, and you can't directly disable it, but you can kind of do a workaround of like someone who hasn't liked the page in 2 weeks, something like that.
Right.
But I don't know what the feedback would be if it was live without the ability of doing
Yeah.
that. If that
Yeah.
seems like an
It
issue.
seems like it wouldn't have value if it wasn't being managed live.
Right, just another way to stream it.
Yeah. So in terms of cadence, because I think that was the other thing, like people are like, this was great. When's the next one? Like I would say we have the roundtables, which are essentially modeled after this to a degree, right? It's just very
Right.
focused on budget. So what is it that we think we would recommend to the council? Is, to me, monthly feels like it might be too much. We had originally said, let's do something quarterly. I got the take that people felt like quarterly might not be enough. So is there like a middle ground of doing it every other month? I'm just curious to get,
Definitely post-budget, that would be because I think we're all gonna
Oh,
be
yeah,
real busy
100%.
between finance and budget and the engagement around the budget, which is gonna go, oh, well, that's till the end of May, right?
Yeah.
Because then the vote's in June. Then you got summer. I'm
I
not saying
think-
delay it, but
No, I would think that maybe like end of June before
Yeah.
people really, are
Take
in
off
full
for-
summer mode.
right, July
Or
is
we
really
maybe-
the
Yeah,
summer.
we maybe
Yep.
try and
Yeah.
hit one more time, the third week of June
Yeah.
or something,
In
and
June,
then
yeah.
we'll see in the fall.
yeah. And I think what we can, if that's the path we're going, maybe we can make our May agenda, one of the topics is to select a June topic for recommendation for the council that we can hopefully get on a May or June meeting before we publish it, to Ken's point, so that we're getting alignment
Yep.
as an item on the
That makes
agenda.
sense.
I like June, and then again, like, some of this is going to be topic driven, right? Like if there's a hot topic that we feel like is worth talking about, I think these are all good ones, the ones we have listed that would get us through pretty much the rest of the year if we did do these every other month. So, but we can also solicit ideas from other counselors if there's other things that they would want to own. Because again, my hope would be there are, like, depending on the topic, the counselors that are either interested or closest to would be the ones most interested in doing it. So like for the environment one, April, with you as the liaison to all of our environmental sustainability conservation commission groups, it seems like this would be a good one for you to also host. But given you just hosted, Ken mentioned traffic, is that one Ken would want to host? And is there another counselor who would want to host that with him? So that we're kind of sharing
I'll
the
another one
opportunity.
go.
All right, well, this was great. So I think we have one more, let me stop sharing. I think we have one more agenda item.
Yeah, council corner for April and May.
Yep, April, May. So again, I think what we had talked about before, so at least for the next one, I was thinking I would do a write-up from the Counselor Corner Live on growth that just kind of thanks people for attending and highlights some of the conversation. So I'll do that for the next one. And then I think for May, again, I think we want another budget one. And maybe that one, again, we had talked about trying to get members of the finance committee to write them. And I'm wondering, Ken, if you wouldn't mind taking the 1st of May one as well, on like highlighting budget, if that's a topic you want to highlight, or maybe some other topic. And then I think we'll have maybe another budget one in May as well. So
I'll grab one in May, but the April is very bad for me, so I can't hit May 1.
Okay.
You know, we're gonna have it on the last Thursday before the first Friday of that. I just honestly just can't do it. If we want to delay that and do it the second week of May, which I do believe we have more flexibility now, I'll do something.
Okay, yeah, and that one can be more topical. I think we were trying to say, let's have this cadence of like budget, other topic, budget, other topic. So if there's a different topic besides budget, like if you want to tee up traffic, if that's something you're interested in or whatever it might be, like if we could just pencil you in as somebody to do the second week of May.
Yeah, just do
For
it
that
that
one?
way
And then
And
we still,
always- yeah.
and we still need something for the first week of May, which again, maybe we could just, well, we'll have to have that known.
A
So we'll have our
newsletter
next
or
meeting.
talking the newsletter or the leader?
That one would actually be for the leader. So the 1st of May would be both the leader and the newsletter.
Well, we don't always have to have a 1st of May leader.
Yeah, that's true.
Up to you. Just don't kill yourself trying to get it in May if it's not right for May, because where are we in the budget by the end of April?
We will have done most of the department reviews.
Right.
And we'll be headed into public hearings and second readings.
Yeah.
Right. And
April,
so-
would you want to do another one?
Definitely not.
Because your last one was so great.
Topically, there's only so much that we can write about the budget. And Allison,
Will be in
already
the
has
know.
plans to do a budget newsletter and then to highlight different budget pieces throughout the newsletter. So I almost feel like that 1st of May one definitely has to be on a different topic.
I agree.
And I am gonna just be so ingrained. I mean, the three of us are the communications committee and the finance committee. This is a big lift for the three of us right now.
Yeah,
And so I feel like let's kick that May 1st one to somebody
yeah.
who maybe has a little bit of a.
Let me
lighter
see if there's anything Jean Marie or John
Yeah,
or Don would want to kind of like,
feeling.
yeah, I'll reach out to the three of them and see if any of them want to take anything up for that first one in May, because I think that's a good point. I think we're going to be exhausted, and to get somebody to just step in for that first.
I'm
Or
gonna be
that
sick of
one.
hearing from the three of us.
Days for me to write out.
Oh, no, I didn't
Yeah.
even think, I got like 4 hours.
And I know the result doesn't look like it took days, but it took days. You know, I got my backspace down real quick.
I texted John at 10:30, which is past my bedtime and past his bedtime, I know, to say, wait a minute, it just dawned on me, I don't think I have until Friday to get this to Allison, I think it's tomorrow, can you please confirm
Yeah.
that? And then he replied at, 6:20 in the morning, being like, yep, you're right, it's today. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Made it
Yeah.
happen.
I know, I felt so bad because I was like, April, I said Friday like 5 times, and you're like, are you sure? And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not.
No, you're
So
right.
you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Which I'll
You always
I'll
get the
learn.
pinch. Jean Marie does very well with it, and she bang them out
See,
2
that's,
hours.
I think, let's just.
Yeah. I'll reach out
John and
to,
Jean Marie for that May
Yeah.
1st one.
I'm sure they might have something that they might want to share. So I think we can, I'll ask them if they want to take the lead for something then.
Maybe Costco or something, some other item people are interested.
Something fun to talk about.
All right, so next item is public comment. Is there anybody from the public participating who would wish to say something? I don't
There
think
is
so.
none.
Thank God.
All right, item 9, future agenda items. I think, are you guys okay if we just pass over that one?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we laid it out
Yeah,
as, in the process of our discussion.
All right, item 10 is adjournment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Council Snyder?
Yes.
Council Johnson?
yes.
Council Anderson?
Yes.
Good job, John.
All right, thanks, everyone.